Hi friends, we're back.
Yes, we are. Here we are back with a
book tag.
Hooray!
So we got tagged by my friend Jane from over at It's Jane Lindsay.
Hey Jane.
Well, I got tagged. I'm just dragging him into it. To do the To All the Boys I've Loved Before book tag. This is created by Frankiness, and I will link to Jane's video and the original creator's video down below. First of all, before anything else, I'm just gonna quickly say that I friggin' love the To All the Boys Before movie. If you haven't, To All the Boys I've Loved Before movie. And if you haven't yet watched it on Netflix, you must, especially if you love rom-coms, because it is so, so good. Anyway.
I'm especially a fan of the author interview on your Facebook Live.
I'll link to that too. I got the opportunity to interview Jenny Han for her Facebook Live, and that was also really fun, so. Anyway, moving on, there are 5 questions in this tag, and they're all themed after the 5 boys that Lara Jean writes love letters to in the first book of this trilogy. So we'll just jump right in. I'm sure most of you already know anyway what the premise of the book was about, but that's essentially it. She wrote 5 love letters to 5 different people, and they got sent out. And of course it changes everything. So the first one is Kenny from Camp, AKA your first book love. So many books. I'm gonna preface this by saying, like, obviously I wanted to say Dr. Seuss books because I distinctly have a memory of like sitting with a pile of them and telling my mom and my dad to be like, read this over again, read this over again. But as for the one that I remember reading first and loving, I actually want to mention Little House in the Big Woods by Laura Ingalls Wilder. This is a sort of, I guess, autobiographical take on her life with her family. I'm sure there are lots of fictionalized parts as well, but it is a very interesting read, especially to someone who was growing up in, you know, as a kid, reading about someone who had a very different life because there was none of the common conveniences we have now, like
indoor
electricity,
plumbing.
indoor plumbing, apartments.
Notice that's the first thing I was...
Public transportation, all of that stuff.
Technology.
I actually reread this one maybe 2 years ago, and I still thought it was fairly charming. I really love the characters in it a lot. I will say that the series does have some problematic things about it later on, but it is also a very specific take and from a very specific perspective. So if you go into it knowing that, then you know. And I will always just have this memory of trying to read this one at the dinner table and my mom threatening to take it away from me forever if I would not stop. So there's that.
Awesome. My childhood...
Sorry, Mom.
She's better about that, Mom, which is not true because we read at the table all the time. Anyway, my book love, it's an out-of-print book, actually. It was a gift to me by my aunt, who among my mom's sisters is the only one who does read. She got that from my grandfather, who did have the family library, however tiny that shelf was back in the day. And it's called The Spirit of the Wild by Tom McGowan. It's I don't know how it's aged since it was written, but I distinctly remember that The Spirit of the Wild is just another name for the Wendigo, and it's about a girl who kind of has in her backyard like a mound gets unearthed. Okay. And they're like Native American carvings and whatever it is, so that's already problematic to begin with. To see if the lore and the legend and the mixture of cultures, it was done respectfully. So I haven't read this in a while, but it is, I had to hunt this down because I needed a copy of it again. And I distinctly remember loving it, and she had to, in order to protect the world from the Spirit of the Wild, had to to reenact an ancient ritual in order to keep the creature at bay and prevent basically the dawn of the Wild Age. So it's kind of cool. So.
Yeah, it does sound cool.
Yeah.
Alright, the next one is John Ambrose McClaren, who is my second favorite dude in the series, AKA The Book That Got Away, which is basically a book that may not be your all-time favorite right now, but you're always gonna love it. So you get to go first.
I get to go first, and I want to bring out the
Aww.
From the Legends universe. Most of you who have been watching these channels and hear me talk about Star Wars know my pain. Not that the Legends universe was perfect. Boy, oh boy, there were a lot of dumpster fires in there too. But that's the only way to describe it. But there was a 6-book kind of mini, well, it's not 6 books, it's about 9, I don't even know anymore. But there was a series of books called The Young Jedi Knights, where after Luke establishes the Jedi Academy on Yavin 4, some of the next generation folks start to train. And I would read these over and over again. They were my introduction to real mainstream reading, not just because they were gifts or whatever, but I had to, I remember times after school where I would either walk to the bookstore or have somebody, you know, walk for me because I was tiny. Or they looked, well, no, I wasn't tiny, I was huge for a child, but young, and they wouldn't let me out. And so to get me these books the minute they came out, and so it was the first time that a series happened while I was just patiently awaiting what's going to happen next. It was a very surreal time. So they're about, by the way, for those of you who don't know, Han and Leia in this universe had twins and a younger son, not just the one Sith Lord.
Wow.
Not just the one Sith Lord. So definitely a different universe. Consequently, one of them did turn Sithy. But who cares? That's in the Legends universe now. That never happened. And so I still love these, even if they probably haven't translated well.
Sorry, I'm just like, someone turned Sithy.
Well,
who cares?
You know, it was a dramatic thing where one of the twins turns evil and now the sister has to fight them. But it's just very...
Maybe I didn't read it.
Tropity.
Maybe I read a different one.
Fun.
Well, the book I actually wanted to mention, I still love it. Like when I think of it, I'm just like, I love it. It's just, I haven't read it in a while. And I still think it would be the one I would recommend if someone were to ask me about this author, even though her newer series is doing very well. It's Something Strange and Deadly by Susan Dennard. And it is essentially historical fantasy, historical paranormal, I guess you could still count that as fantasy, where there are undead in Philadelphia.
Yeah, that works.
And the entire story is about a girl named Eleanor Fitt who is trying to find her brother, but then she ends up crossing paths with this group of people known as the Spirit Hunters, and a lot of shenanigans ensue because zombies in Philadelphia in the past. And this entire series is so great. I thought it was so fun, it was so well done, and you should definitely check them out.
Sounds like a weird team. The Philadelphia Zombies are leading 3-1 today.
Alright. The third question is Lucas from Homecoming, AKA or GBF, Gay Best Friend, which is not a term I'm very fond of, but we're gonna roll with it. And it's for your favorite LGBTQ plus character or book. And I'm a vote for Magnus Bane.
Yeah, we've explained in a few videos, a couple of videos ago, that this is the House of Bane.
We just love Magnus Bane.
Bane, Lightwood,
such
whatever.
A great...
Or Lightwood Bane, whatever, it doesn't matter. Point is...
Such a great character.
Point is, if you love somebody, you love the people that they love, right? So fine, Alec Lightwood gets a pass.
All of this bitterness here.
And for those of you who love Alec, I get it now. I do. I didn't want to get it, but I do. So for those of you who love Alec, or for those of you who don't love Alec, well, you're gonna have to, if you love somebody, you're gonna have to love who they love. One way or the other.
But also Magnus is just great, so.
Anyway, the Bane Chronicles is about every other story in and around and between the history of the Shadowhunters books. So if you are absolutely enamored of the lore and the history and even the characters for it, a lot of this stuff is going to make you terribly angry because you would want more of these characters and you don't have them. And
Great.
That's the hazard of reading these things. Okay.
Alright, next is Josh Sanderson, aka the boy. Josh Sanderson, aka the book next door, aka the book you'll love no matter how many times you read it. And this is totally cheating, obviously, because Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire. It is my favorite book in the Harry Potter series because it's such a good turning point book, but also because I genuinely just love where the characters are at in this part of the story and what happens within the pages of this one. So, and no matter how many times I read it, I never get tired of it, even though I know exactly how it's going to play out, even though I also know how many feelings it's going to give me in the end. Like, I still love it.
And for those of you who don't know what the story of Harry Potter is, it's about a young boy who discovers that he's a wizard. You're a wizard, Harry! Mine would be The Will of the Empress by Tamara Pierce.
Also very good.
It is, I want to say, the last installment in the series about a bunch of young kids who discover that they are, it's in the vein of kids discovering they're actually magical.
Can you tell that we like something specific here?
Right, and so this is the book where they had a little diaspora. They hadn't seen each other in ages after spending several years together as kids. Right. They spent their early teens away from each other and now their late teens back together, and this is the book sort of ties and closes that circle and allows it to reopen in a different way. And it's a great coming of age tale at the very core of it. Those are my favorite deals, is just kids growing up and coming into their power, and whatever kind of power that is, and finding their place in the world. And I love that stuff, especially if it involves kids that are actually friends and become grown-ups and figure out that it's not as easy as they thought it would be. And so I highly recommend this, not necessarily this book. Before you get to this book, you're gonna need to read the other books.
You have to read all
too,
of them. We've done a bunch of videos about that if you want to see them.
If you want to see them.
Slightly spoilery for some of them, but we usually say when. So.
Absolutely.
And the last and most beloved in my heart is Peter Kavinsky, aka Your One True Book Love.
Oh, this was hard. It was almost like asking me to pick a very favorite, all-time favorite
It did
book.
take me a while to think about this because I was like, you can interpret this question in so many ways. You can pick someone you love from a book, or you can pick a book that you will love forever and ever.
But the way Alexa picked hers was how I got to pick mine. So.
I just interpreted it as something that was foundational for me in terms of like what I like to read and what I like to write. And it's something that I revisit every so often just because I enjoy it so much, and it's genuinely a part of who I am because I read it when I was so young, and I reread it multiple times before, you know, booktube and blogging took over my life. And I wanted to say Grimm's Fairy Tales by the Brothers Grimm. There's just something magical and terrifying about reading these fairy tales. It's a combination of like seeing these life lessons in stories, but also seeing the magic behind everyday ordinary things and ordinary people. And I loved that growing up, and I still love that now as an adult. And it's always something I like seeing elements of in other stories, especially fantasy reads. So I definitely had to say that if I were gonna pick something, this would have to be my one true book love.
And thanks to that foundational definition, I was able to zero in on my childhood love. Literally. Like, if ever I had a childhood, like, love interest in my entire life, it would have to be Sarah Crew. So this is a little princess. I fell in love with her completely. I think I'm still pretty much in love with, you know, the girl who made up stories to get through some terrible times. That's the girl that I loved. It is the only real fan fiction I've ever made. There's a file somewhere there of an adult Sarah Crew who, well, by adult I mean she's probably reached her, you know, she's got her trust fund, whatever that age that is, that they release her father's gemstones to her, and a young stable boy who drives her around town, who also likes to read and better himself, ends up falling in love with her, and guess who that stable boy is? Anyway, so we'll always be in love with the girl who makes up stories.
True.
So just gotta love her.
And that was the To All the Boys I've Loved Before book tag. I'm so glad we got tagged to do that one because I really love that series and that book and that show. Like, I don't even know what I'm saying. I really love that book series and the movie, and I think you guys should check it out too. I actually don't know who hasn't or has done this tag, so if you feel like doing it, if you love the movie, if you love the book series, consider yourself tagged by us. And we hope you guys enjoyed this video, and we'll be I can't talk today, and we'll be back with another one soon.
We hope you guys enjoyed these. We hope you guys enjoyed this video, and we'll be back soon.